Okay, welcome back. We're doing a little more WRC Generations today because I have given it a good amount of hours since the last video that I've posted, and I have some further thoughts about this game. What I like about it, what I dislike about it, but let's do it while we're driving because nobody wants to watch this screen. We're going to Estonia, to this track, to this setting, just to this, to here, because why not? Whatever. Let's just go. Let's go. Okay, so what you may or may not know about me is I love these rally games, but rally isn't my first love when it comes to sim racing. I sort of kind of came to it a little bit late, and I'm not the best at it, to be fair. But I have played a fair bit over the years, and I have developed a favorite rally game, which has kind of stayed pretty constant over the years. And I will say that for the relatively few years that I have played rally games, and I've played rally maybe for decades, to be honest with you, but very sparsely, because I always found it really difficult and frustrating and a bit kind of impenetrable compared to like circuit racing, my kind of first love when it comes to sim racing. So just the frustration of not being very good at it has sort of kept me away from it over the years. I'll kind of explain why I've been getting into it a lot more lately. But just to kind of like finish this thought before I trail off of it and lose my train of thought, my favorite rally game has kind of always, since I've had a favorite rally game, has always been Dirt Rally 2.0. That's kind of my go-to. That's sort of whenever I get a new rally game, that's kind of what I compare it to. And for years and years and years, it's been, what do we say? What's the term for it? Unseated or unrivaled, unbested, whatever. So Dirt Rally 2 has always been for me the pinnacle of my rally experience. Obviously, everything I'm saying is an opinion. Opinions aren't facts. Your mileage may vary. You may have very, very different ideas about rally games than me, and that's fine. You may have much more rally experience than me, and making your opinions more valid. Again, that's perfectly legit. But I have to say, given the amount of time, a little over a week and many hours put into WRC Generations, I feel I can, with a very good amount of confidence, say that Dirt Rally 2, in my opinion, has finally been unseated as my favorite all-time rally game. I've played WRC 7, WRC 8, 9, 10, and now Generations, and those previous games from this developer were, in my opinion, slightly, just very, very slightly inferior to Dirt Rally 2, in my opinion. But I have to say that my new all-time favorite rally game is now WRC Generations. So, does that mean the game's perfect? Does that mean it's not possible to have made it better? Of course not. Don't be silly. But I really do think this is just kind of an all-out better game. Doesn't mean the Dirt Rally 2 I think is trash now. It's not. It's still number 2 on my list of all-time favorite rally games. And of course, as some people are inclined to do, you might think, well, this is just recency bias. The game's new, it just came out, and that's why you kind of currently prefer it over Dirt Rally 2, but it's really not a better game than Dirt Rally 2. Well, there's a couple of thoughts to unpack there. Well, we're all
Flat right 100.
a little bit subject to recency bias, I think, if we're honest.
Right 500.
But
into
the
overcrest, right 5
recency
medium,
bias
again.
when I played previous iterations of this series by the same developer
Left
did not
5
prompt
overcrest,
me to
middle into left 5 tightens.
ebulliently just froth at the mouth about how wonderful those games are in comparison to Dirt Rally 2. They never superseded Dirt Rally 2 in my imagination or my opinion.
And right 5 keep into left
I'm also
5,
not saying
medium,
it's
100.
an all-out better game than Dirt Rally 2, because better implies some sort of objective metric. And what we're talking about here is opinions.
Short and left 5,
Opinions
short,
are subjective; they're not objective. So I can't say it's a better game. I don't know if it's a better game or not, but I like it. I like it more.
Caution left 4 into flat right 80.
Okay, so now, having said that,
Right 5.
there are
short,
some
don't
things
cut, into
too
left
to
5,
think about. Like,
200.
you know, there are some kind of weird issues with the game that, like, for me, my favorite kind of whoa, I'm too busy talking, not paying enough attention to driving. One of my favorite things to do
Right into flat right over bridge.
in any rally title is I always tend to love playing the legendary, playing the Legends rally cars over the current gen crop of WRC
Left 5 don't cut,
machines.
and right 5 short.
So one thing that I can say about this game is some of
Left 4
the
short into right 5
sort of
short,
classic
30.
vintage legendary cars in WRC Generations are not, for me personally, not as fun to drive as they are
Right 5
in
and
Dirt
left
Rally
5 short,
2.0.
into right 5 short.
However,
narrows.
but that's only a certain few of them. Right? I think a lot of the Legends cars in WRC Generations are actually now better than they were in Dirt Rally 2. Now, I'm not saying they're more or less realistic. So, what do I know? I've driven my whole life, but I've never driven a rally car in anger. I've never driven a race car in anger. So I can't speak to what is or isn't more realistic when it comes to the physics. I think you should be cautious of listening to any sim racer tell you what is or isn't more realistic, unless they have real-world racing experience, which to me, obviously most of us don't. So I'm not speaking to its realism, although there is certainly kind of in any game that tends to simulate real-world physics, there's kind of a difficult to define quality of, does it feel real? Does it feel, whoa, does it feel plausible in comparison to the driving that I've done in my life, which is not real racing and not in a real race car. So you kind of have a gut instinct for what is or isn't real. But, like I say, just be wary of people who telling you definitively and attempting to pass their opinions off as objective reality, that it is or isn't more realistic. Because we don't. Ask a rally driver. They'll be able to tell you. I can't tell you. But I can tell you it feels pretty damn real. And it feels pretty enjoyable. It also doesn't feel so real to be as punishing as I'm sure it would be in real life. You can tell in any rally game that they've sort of sanded off the rough edges. And though while rally games might be difficult and a bit frustrating, I think they've still nerfed the grip levels and the physics a little bit to help accommodate us. Sorry, sad sim racers. But it feels incredible. Okay, now beyond the Legends machines, what I will have to say is that this game has actually now started to pivot my preference slightly away from the vintage rally machines. You know, obviously I'm in a vintage machine right now, and I still have deep, deep love for these vintage cars. But with the advent of this new hybrid era of the current top-tier rally cars, I have fallen in love with the new machines. Oh my goodness. The new machines, the new hybrid rally machines are amazing to drive. Incredibly fun. Incredibly responsive. Very neutral handling. Boatloads of grip. Downforce. All kinds of just craziness. They've got huge wings on them. But the thing that really gets me about the new rally machines is that that hybrid assist to sort of low-end acceleration. It doesn't make them faster at top end. It just makes them accelerate faster, and that energy from the battery and from those electric motors regens every time you brake, and it makes the acceleration just from like 0 to 100 in those new rally machines feel incredible. Like I say, so much grip, so much acceleration, especially when you have the hybrid power going. It is absolutely phenomenal. It feels so good. And I wonder, too, maybe if part of my previous aversion to top-tier rally machines is maybe that has to do with the fact that I'm just not great at these games, and maybe the top-tier rally cars were too fast for me to be able to control well, and I found it frustrating just because I'm bad at the game. You know, maybe that's it. I'm willing to acknowledge that's it. You know, if that is indeed the case. But this new crop of top-tier rally cars, they feel light, they feel neutral, it feels like those giant wings on the back of them give you lots of downforce and grip, and all of that combined with the acceleration of those hybrid electric EV motors that they've got, giving you an acceleration boost at bottom end, just all add up to a truly, truly incredible, difficult to describe experience that feels almost as good as looking at this classic vintage Toyota in the Castro livery. Oh, I think I never really even thought about rally games or World Rally in general. It never even occurred to me because I was never really exposed to it. You know, being an American, we don't get to see much WRC over here. More now because we live in the internet age. But you know, when I grew up, there was no internet. So nobody knew what WRC was. So I had no kind of affinity or attachment to it. It wasn't until, like a lot of people, I guess, not most, maybe like a lot of people, World Rally didn't exist in my mind until I started playing Sega Rally in the arcade. So you just kind of always have, like, if that's your first taste of Rally, even though it's obviously a super arcadey experience, if your first exposure to Rally is Sega Rally, then you're just naturally, you're going to have an affinity for this Toyota, for the Lancia Stratos, especially if you love cheese wedges, and I desperately love cheese wedges. And you're also going to love the Lancia Delta Integrale. Those three were just the monsters of Sega Rally. And they had that Castro livery too, which definitely tweaks me in just the right ways. But yeah, the new rally cars are freaking incredible. I also love this sort of the time and weather transitions that this game has too. So we'll play this track again in a new modern rally car, and I want to talk to you about something else that many of you may know, some of you might not know. I feel like I'm kind of late to the party on this, but I kind of had my mind blown a few nights ago, and I'll tell you why when we start that rally over. Okay, so we're going to go back to Estonia, back to here, back to here. We're going to do dynamic weather this time. I want it to go from storm to clear, and we're going to take one of the modern boys, because damn. So this is a great great transitional race. It's the absolute same track. It's around 14 kilometers. Starts out super rainy, but by the end of it, there'll be no rain. The sun will be out. The track will be drying. There might be some puddles, but there'll be even areas towards the end that are dusty again. So pretty cool. Look at the giant wing. So beautiful. So beautiful. That has to produce a crap load of downforce. I mean, it feels it. So I don't think I'm imagining that. To be fair, I could be. Because I'm just a dumb sim racer, a degenerate sim racer. So let's go and let's get talking about why my mind was blown yet again.
50, right 5.
Okay. So in preparing to do some sort of further thoughts about this game, I decided, you know, what the hell? I wanted to see if this game was even playable or any good with a controller. Now, it seems kind of obvious to most people that that's how most people are going to experience this game. So I wanted to try it, and I'd never tried it before, because, to be honest, why the hell would I? I have a sim rig. I actually have 2 sim rigs. Why not? Because they're small. So why would I ever play this with a controller? It never even occurred to me to play it with a controller until I thought, well, maybe if I'm sharing thoughts about this game, maybe I should share some thoughts that are relevant to the majority of the people who are playing this game. So I decided to just give it a try with the controller, and my expectations were low. Because part of the reason that, you know, like I say, I've been so averse to rally games is because I found them frustrating. Because before, in the past, when I first played them, it was most often with a controller. And anytime you play like a simulation style, or let's call it simulation adjacent game with a controller, it's kind of like French frying when you should pizza, or pizzaing when you should French fry. You're gonna have a bad time. And I've often told my friends who don't have a sim rig that, yeah, you should play this game, you should play that game, but these games right here, these ones over in this little area, if you don't have a sim rig, you're not going to enjoy these, so you should probably stay away. And that's been my thought on racing with controllers in games with even remotely realistic physics. So I have both the Series X, and I also have the PlayStation 5. And I really love that DualSense controller with the adaptive triggers is kind of amazing. Like when I first heard about the adaptive triggers on the DualSense, before the PS5 even came out 2 years ago, I thought, like many people who jaded old gamers, I thought the same thing they did. Oh, it's gimmicky. Whoa, stop. It's gimmicky. It's not really going to be that big of a deal. But when I play like a shooter, like a Sniper Elite or Sniper Ghost Warrior contracts or whatever, those adaptive triggers are kind of amazing. Because it's not like, again, forgive me if you have a PlayStation 5 and you already know what I'm talking about and this is boring you. Sorry, I'll try to get through it. Adaptive triggers aren't just like a vibration or better vibration. There's physical motors in the controller that push against the triggers, making them more difficult to depress. And in shooter games like Sniper Elite, they give you the effect of having a dual stage trigger. If you know anything about shooting, if you're a shooter, you'll know that most triggers are dual stage, which means the very first part of the pull of the trigger is very soft, and it kind of comes up against the hard stop, and then that's the first stage. And you pull it a little bit further, and it'll click, and that's when the gun fires, and that's essentially what's called a two-stage trigger. Now, with the DualSense and Sniper Elite, the game actually gives you a real feeling of having dual stage triggers. So it's kind of made the PlayStation my console of choice when it comes to shooters like that, because I really like the feel of that dual stage trigger, and I think that is a definite edge that the PlayStation has over the Xbox. Is the controller is superior in a lot of ways. Not in every way. There are things that I really prefer about the Xbox controller. Most specifically, the fact that you can swap batteries in it. Instead of like, oh, you can't swap a battery, so if the battery goes bad, you have to buy a completely new controller, or you have to completely, plug the controller in if your battery dies. Where in the Xbox, you can just swap the batteries out. I think that's vastly superior. But in kind of every other regard, whoops, the PlayStation DualSense controller is superior. So why this long preamble about the stupid controller? Again, like I say, games like this have always been a masochistic act to play with a controller. So imagine my shock and emphatic surprise when I played this game with a DualSense controller with the adaptive triggers turned on for the PlayStation 5. It kind of blew me away. I had like a real come to Jesus moment with this PS5 controller, where the clouds parted, heavenly light shone down, and a host of angels started singing Gloria in Excelsis Deo when I started playing this game with the DualSense controller with the adaptive triggers turned on. And why do I say that? Because not only was it competent, it was actually incredibly fun. And the reason for that is completely the adaptive trigger on the brake. So when you're using a DualSense controller and you hit the brakes in this game and you have ABS turned on, you feel the kind of you feel the car braking, and when you get to a certain a certain depth of press, a certain length of press on the controller, you will feel the ABS kick in, and the motor in the trigger will actually pulse against your finger, pushing your finger forward, so you can completely feel the ABS kick in when the tires are starting to lock up. It is, people throw around the term game changer way too much. But I can say without any hyperbole in any way that feature is an absolute game changer in every sense of the word. Because instantly and precisely when your tires are starting to lock up. Before you hear the tires slide, before the car starts like sliding sideways, instantly. The moment your car's onboard ABS computer knows that the tire's slipping, at the same time. So you can back off of the brakes to brake more effectively. So you kind of use that depth of travel on your brake pedal with much greater finesse and feedback information about the ABS kicking in, and to back off. So it actually makes you can play the game and play it well with the PS5 DualSense controller, and that blew me away. I was speechless. I played the game for hours like that and had a ton of fun with it. It was incredible. So then you can imagine. So yeah, this game is playable with a controller, especially if you have a PS5. I don't know about the Series X version. I don't have both versions. But I imagine it's still pretty good. but you're going to lose that
Don't cut.
feature of those adaptive triggers. And furthermore, speaking of those games that I would tell my friends without sim rigs to stay away from,
Right 5 and finish.
I tried some of those too, with those adaptive triggers. And of course, it only works with very new games for which the DualSense controller was in mind when they were developing the game. It doesn't, like, even though you can play backwards compatible games on your PlayStation and stuff, those features of the adaptive triggers aren't there because they have to be programmed for. So I went to the PS5 version of Gran Turismo 7, which of course I've never played with a controller because I have a sim rig. Why would I? And likewise, I also played it. I played Assetto Corsa Competizione with the controller. I would have never thought in 100 years that ACC, even though it's the most buggy, glitchy ass game that I've ever played on a console, it's still my favorite because it is the most realistic physics, and I'm speaking as a sim racer, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But it has the most realistic physics of any driving sim ever released on the console. I can say that just emphatically, unequivocally. Granted, it's an opinion, but whatever. I would have never thought in 100 years that ACC would be playable with a controller. But I managed to do it, and not only did I manage to do it, not only was it just competent, it was doable, it was fun, it was engaging, and it kind of like, of each of the 3 games that I played with that DualSense controller with the adaptive feedback, WRC Generations, Gran Turismo 7, and ACC, each one of them managed that feature very differently and in a very, I guess, kind of logical sort of way. Because the first game that I tried outside of WRC Generations with the adaptive trigger controller was Gran Turismo 7. And it's funny because both of the triggers in Gran Turismo 7 feel very, very stiff. And the feeling of a very stiff brake pedal when you're using the adaptive trigger kind of makes it feel more like a hydraulic brake pedal because, when you're braking in a car in real life, it's not about the pedal travel, it's about the amount of force that you're putting into the hydraulic chamber and getting that hydraulic multiplication factor as it goes from the master cylinder to the slave cylinder to push against the brakes. So you're getting that multiplication, but of your force. So having that really stiff brake pedal in Gran Turismo 7 makes it feel more like a brake pedal. And again, it also lets you know when the ABS engages, so you know to back off a little bit on the brake. And it really does, if you're playing any of these 3 games with the PlayStation 5 controller versus playing them on a Series X with an Xbox controller, it will make you a better driver. It will improve your lap times. It is hardware that will actually make you better at the game. Which most sim racers are very cautious to say that's not the case when it comes to sim gear. But I have to say, knowing instantly in your finger, on that left trigger, you know when the tires are starting to break loose. Before you hear the tires breaking loose, before you see the car sliding sideways, knowing that in advance of other players will give you an advantage. And it's more immersive too. It's better, it's more fun, it's more immersive, and it makes you better. Holy crap. I feel like Microsoft has really dropped the ball in the controller department this generation. Even Phil Spencer, head of Xbox division at Microsoft, has said, yeah, that new PlayStation controller is pretty amazing, and we might have to come up with something like that on our own. And they really should. And we're 2 years into this generation, and I haven't seen anything about adaptive triggers on an Xbox controller. I don't know if there's a legal reason they can't do it, if like Sony has a patent or something. I don't know. But Phil Spencer and Xbox need to get on that ASAP, because Xbox players need to have controllers with adaptive triggers. Absolutely, 100%. And let me back up too. When I'm talking about these adaptive controllers on WRC Generations, I also thought about, well, what if I turn the ABS off? what will that brake pedal feel like? So I went in the options, turned the ABS off, and then I felt the brake pedal on the controller, and it felt completely different. It felt totally different. It had a stiffer feel of the brake pedal, like you would get when you hit the brakes. So when you hit the brakes and the tires actually do lose traction and there's no ABS pulsing against your fingers, you can still feel the tires break traction. You feel the wheels breaking traction in that trigger, but it's a much more subtle effect than if you have the ABS on. Because the ABS, it has that pulse against your finger where you rapidly feel the engagement of that pressurized canister hitting against the master cylinder. You feel that much more rapidly, much more powerfully. But it's not completely gone when you turn the ABS off. Like I say, you can feel the tires breaking traction, but it's just a more subtle, like it would be. Incredible. And then, then I played when I played ACC with the adaptive triggers on. Like I said, I would have never thought in 100 years that ACC would be playable with a controller. But with those adaptive control triggers, it's not only playable, you can play it well, and it's fun. It's incredibly fun. And again, it has a completely different brake pedal feel because ACC almost exclusively focuses on GT3 and GT4 series, which are both a series that, because in real life they are populated by a bunch of, quote, gentleman drivers, unquote, those cars, those series very much encourage both ABS and traction control because they want the cars to be more controllable for your average gentleman driver and for the series to be safer. So those series, you're meant to not turn off the ABS. And they have, like, when you play ACC with the adaptive triggers, there's a lot further travel in that brake pedal pull before the ABS engages. But it does engage, and you can tell when it's engaging in the trigger in ACC, and it's quite literally a game changer. Like I say, I would have, before the DualSense controller, I would have never recommended that anyone play ACC who does not have a sim rig. But I can say, if you don't have a sim rig and you just on the PS5 and you've got the DualSense with the adaptive triggers, which you do because it comes with the system, it's not like a special thing you have to buy extra, you actually can play ACC and play it well. And it's not a frustrating experience. It's not an exercise in masochism to play any of these games with just your regular basic DualSense controller for the PS5. Mind, = blown. That's about all I have to say. Just incredible. It took me completely by surprise, and I think that's the only reason. That's kind of the only. I'm sort of at the end of my collective further thoughts about WRC Generations here. So, just in summation, this game is not only good, it is the best WRC game that Kiloton have made. It's better than all of their previous WRC games that they've made. It's a shame that it's the last one that they're going to be able to make with the official WRC license, and because next year the license goes to EA and Codemasters. Now, EA and Codemasters, I'm sure they're very competent. They've made great, rally games in the past. Just look no further than the Dirt Rally 2, my previous favorite game. But they are going to have an impossible task ahead of them to best this game. Not only just because it's a good game, because it is the cumulative efforts of the developer Kiloton's years of making WRC games that they've been able to put all of this content in there, all of these tracks. And if this is Codemasters' first time back at doing WRC games, they're not going to be able to have time to put this much content in. I don't feel, especially when it comes to tracks, I don't feel like they're going to be able to do that in a regular dev cycle of a game. So this is kind of like This is the developer kilotons moment where they just kind of drop this game on the world and drop the mic and walk off the stage. This is, I think, for anybody who has previously, like me, held that the best console rally game was Dirt Rally 2. Give it a try. And it, like I say, it was only $39 for the base game. If you like rally games, there's no reason not to get this. And in further summation, yeah, difficult sim-adjacent games that are developed with that DualSense controller for the PS5 in mind are absolutely 100% playable, even if you don't have a sim rig. But that's it. That's kind of where my thoughts are in this game. I just wanted to put this video up as sort of a follow-up to my last one. I know I seem to be going crazy about enthusiasm for this game, but the more I play it, the more I like it. Usually the more you play something, the more glitches you find, the more things that you find that don't work quite well, the more things that you dislike. This game, the more I play it, the more I like it. Just more and more. I will have to say one brief mention about something in this game that I very much kind of like don't like, and even though I'm just a filthy sim racer who doesn't know what real physics, how they work in racing in real life, this game does have a tendency to make the car roll over, even at very low speeds, when realistically I don't think the car would roll over. Yeah, if you're going like 60, 80 miles an hour over a turn, like a left 3 over a crest, yeah, you could very easily roll the car. But this thing seems to like want to roll your car when you're doing like 10 miles an hour and hit a rock. It's crazy. There's no way that can be the way real life works. And there's just something intuitive in your brain when you see something that kind of breaks every experience with real world physics that you've ever had in your life up to that point. You kind of know, hey, this is something's weird here. This isn't right. It's kind of like an uncanny valley for physics. But to be honest with you, any game that deals with very realistic physics, I'm sure it's very, very, very harder than I even know, to be able to make this games realistic, and then still to kind of nerf them a little bit to make them accessible to people who aren't pros. But that's physics during your driving. You know, that's the tires sliding, that's the tires gripping, that's the suspension loading, all these other things that are difficult to program for. Where most sims tend to break down, that physics just can't handle anymore, is during a collision. Because then the physics just spike and everything goes to 11, and the real world can handle these physics calculations, but that might be asking a bit much of a physics engine built for a sim game. But that's really it. Fantastic game. The more I play it, the more I love it. Absolutely incredible. And that's it. If you've been watching this long, I apologize for rambling on seemingly endlessly. Interminable ramblings about WRC Generations are now to close. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.